I am Brad Keelor. He is Erol Tutumluer. Coming up next on Director's Cut, find out what the term no man's land means to him and why it's so important. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, except during the summer and maybe 1 week at the holidays, I sit down with a different GI member who has all kinds of stories to tell. Some of those are personal, some are professional, but all the time, 100% of the time, they are fun. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you watch this interview today, use your internet-connected device, go over to geoinstitute.org, and there you will find out all kinds of things about us, including that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And if you like what you see today, and Erol's going to deliver, you're going to love it. You should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we'll let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Coming to us from the University of Urbana-Champaign. Well, I kind of messed that up. The University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I was working so hard on getting both of those, where he is the Abel Bliss professor in the department. You guys are civil and environmental engineering.
Yep.
It is Erol Tutumluer. And if you didn't know, if I hadn't said Illinois, you just look behind him and you'd know where he is, right? But Erol, welcome and thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me, Brad. It's indeed an honor for me to be here. Hey, the person to talk in your director's cut.
We're going to have a great time today. We've got 10 questions, just like we do every week. 2 of them are the same that we ask everybody. And I always say it's tradition, but really it's I decided that we start with one of those. So the first question is, describe your job in 45 seconds.
Well, I may not need 45 seconds for that, but it's a fun job. And I really like doing all kinds of things that serve the mission of the university here. Typically, the boring answer is like, okay, research, teaching, and service. But I guess among all, I like the first 2 more than the service, especially research, I should say, and what we bring from, the research into our classroom. I probably like a little more teaching graduate students than undergrads, to be honest. But again, research appeals me greatly. So, yeah.
I want to ask this as a follow-up question, because I've never asked this on the show. This is the 256th episode, I think, and I haven't done this yet. I want to know, Erol, how does it feel when one of your students graduates? I asked my advisor this after I finished my master's, and I got a really complicated answer. What are the feelings that go through you when one of your students graduates?
Well, depends, a master's student or a PhD. Anyway, with the PhDs, I feel like I've written another book, yet another book. It's not me writing it, obviously, but, I had the hardest time coming up with my own PhD thesis. And now thinking about it, I think I've graduated so far 28 of them. And I feel extremely proud that they have a state-of-the-art, basically legacy document with them that they will take throughout their life as their legacy book. But with masters, the same. I'm also proud of them, and because they all go back and work in the industry more commonly. Those master students who actually on a routine basis all the time use material from my classes. So I'm especially proud. I have so many students who came back to me asking questions about class, now relate to their own actual professional career work. So, yeah.
We are going to talk about your research as we go through the interview today, but I thought because you're a pavements guy, I thought we should have a story about travel. And it's not necessarily a road trip, and you're going to go a little bit. It's not a road trip, but this is going to be good. I'm ready for this. Errol, what's your most exciting travel story?
Well, let me tell you the most fascinating trip I went on. This was, I believe, in 2014, and there was a conference in China well, it was on cold region soils. Amazingly, they got the name of the conference from the person, one of my colleagues, Professor Jiankun Li. He was in my classes, sitting in my transportation soils class, and now took that. And well, I'm working on cold region soils issues. Why don't I call it Trans-Soil Cold? Okay, that was the first conference in Xining, China, Shanghai province. So the highlight of the conference was a trip to Lhasa, Tibet, actually. Yeah, on a train, taking the trip at the end of the conference. So it was an amazing conference. Of course, the first conference that we started to learn about how to build on, frozen soils and things, especially permafrost. But the big highlight was that the conference being an international one, at the end, I was in the same car in the same compartment, basically with two Russian professors and Professor Jiang Liu, my colleague, four of us. I guess the city we were at was like about 2,200 meters already, the altitude elevation. So it was a 24-hour train trip. There were other, of course, participants of the conference on the train. We had to get a special permission to be able to go to Tibet, actually, before even. So as we started moving up, going up the hill, basically climbing, this was climbing all the way to the Himalayas, right? Right about, right on the train, we had some nice briefings about all that train route, the railroad track. That the Chinese had built and how, other than like 2,000 kilometers or so that we were going to go on that next day, 900 kilometers of that was on permafrost ground. And the challenge nowadays is to keep that permafrost ground still in summertime as frozen, right? Permanently frozen ground. So some of the techniques, how they build things, we were going through on the maps in the compartment, looking at things and trying to understand, and then looking out the window to observe, what had Chinese done on that really fascinating trip. At about 11 p.m. at night, I started to hear some that was being pumped in the car. I know, because we were going so high in altitude. And then, amazingly, I guess it was about 7 a.m. in the morning, all night that we slept. That was the highest pass, 5,100 meters or so up on the Himalayas. And then it was, that was fascinating. There was a stop there. I remember going out. It was quite cold, but we were having a hard time breathing and all that. That was fascinating. Then, until about 3 p.m. in the afternoon that day, the next day, when we finally arrived in Lhasa, Tibet, we were traveling on the Tibetan plateau. And the most amazing thing there was there's complete nothingness, basically. Wow. It's a wilderness, nature, but natural beauty, I should say. You can see those animals running around wild, the elk, they call it. But the most amazing was there was a camp that we were passing, Chinese soldiers. And apparently they knew that that train was passing once a day. They were all saluting us. The train.
That's amazing.
That was amazing. And finally, 3 p.m. or so in the afternoon, we arrived in Lhasa, which is about 3,600 something meters, I think, altitude. And then what we toured and what we saw in Lhasa, especially that Potala Palace, they call it the big palace. if I were an extraterrestrial, I tell you, I would probably come to this earth and steal that palace because they said gold was the least probably precious in that place. So
That's
that was a
amazing.
fascinating trip. Yeah.
That is great. You hit on everything. You even got the permafrost in there. I like that a lot. That is great. And as somebody, as an East Coaster who doesn't even like to go above 2,000 feet in the winter because I'm always afraid it's going to snow when we get up there, that must have been amazing. Wow, that's a great story. Thank you for leading off with that one. Now we've got all these other questions.
Just to let
that
you
have
know,
to answer,
5,100 meters is higher than actually Pikes Peak in Colorado.
Yeah, that's serious business, Errol. I'm impressed. So the third question is always the research question, and this is the one we teased at the beginning of the show. You're going to talk about no man's land. What does that mean to you, pavement engineer Erol Tutumluer? Tell everybody why they should be concerned about no man's land.
Well, when I teach my transportation soils and soil stabilization courses, all related to transportation, and when I say transportation, this is all horizontal construction where we actually do, miles and miles of highways, and you need to characterize and understand what subgrade soil you have. But at the same time, this is the shallowest foundation of all, right? Mm-hmm. I always mention that in my classes. This is where actually you have subgrade, and the top, basically couple of feet or so at the most, or 3 feet at the most, right, is what's going to determine how those pavements under the daily beating of the dynamic traffic loading is going to survive. How you have to build that on a foundation. Now they're talking about pavement foundations for 100 years or so to last, because they want to invest really some pavements that are perpetual, right? And you can't build that without that foundation. But that foundation is so shallow. The no man's land that I call it comes from the fact that, that shallow of a foundation, temperature, moisture, everything changes on a daily basis. And how do you keep track, especially in Illinois, we have silts, right? 1% change in moisture content will jump maybe a couple CBRs right there for the strength. That's the California bearing ratio. Technical, I get a little bit. Anyway, we have to, right? We're geotechnical engineers. You have to have good geotech background to be able to build something that's that shallow and that's under dynamic loading beating. So pavement engineering definitely requires a lot of attention and much better understanding that simple cookbook formulas that have been used over the years. And that no man's land, we need to really take care and maintain for such a long time now, because this is our national asset. We have 4 million miles of roads, 2.4 million of those are paved roads. And, just a little bit of extension of life, believe me, it will bring a lot of savings and a lot of contribution to, again, how we spend money in general.
So I want to ask you a little bit about, I guess, where we're going as a society. That sounds much broader than the real question's going to be, so don't be afraid. Yeah. We talked about climate change when Claudia Zapata was on here last year as it related to pavement engineering. I mean, the key point of what you just went through, I think, really is the volatility. And the unknowns that climate change is introducing to these things, whether it is coastal subsidence or temperature changes or precipitation changes or whatever it is.
Extreme events, resiliency topics, yes.
What's your thinking about how we prepare for these types of things? Because do we make substantial changes to those pavement foundations, or do we keep kind of doing what we've always been doing and change the cycle of replacement or some other thing? Where is your brain on this?
We are actually working against that. Well, against being against the extreme weather events and their dangerous consequences, right? Or impacts. We're trying to make pavements stay even after a flooding event, because nothing, stays in the ground and the pavement foundation. Then, of course, the surface that you have to try is gone. But how can you make sure that actually everything stays intact? Building foundations that will drain the moisture but not make the material wash out, right? That's the whole point. And there are ways to be able to do that. In a project right now, working with my neighbor state here in Indiana, we're looking at polyurethane coating of large riprap or large size aggregates to almost glue them at contact points and make them very freely draining and moisture to drain freely, but the foundation sitting on those large stones, they're glued and staying in place. So that's one way, for example, we can deal with issues such as flooding or other extreme events nowadays, right? Well, of course, there comes the temperature issues in desert climates. And we were in Arizona last year in the Airfield Highway Payments Conference. And that's where you need to test some of your temperature issues, against desert climate. So, indeed, there's a Federal Highway Administration Committee on Resiliency that started working on it. As of last year, I started serving on the panel. And I know we're bringing those issues with the sea level rises and other things and showing some of the solutions that the DOTs by themselves come up with, working together with consultants. And there are colleagues actually who work in this field as well, especially on the East Coast. Yeah.
Perfect answer. That's amazing. So we mentioned at the top, you're at Illinois. If anybody knows you, they know you're at Illinois. They can look behind you. They can see that you're at Illinois. They can pass by you. They can yell ILL, and you will complete the thought, and they will know that you teach at Illinois. You're coming up on 30 years at the University of Illinois, Erol. What's the greatest thing for you about spending 30 years in the same place?
I guess my accent has changed and become the Turkish Illinoisan. That's original Turkish accent has become more Illinoisan version. But anyway, that's a joke that I wanted to start with. But really, I feel the ownership. I feel, actually, I've been lucky to be in a great university, in a great place. Of course, when you become old in a place like this, what happens is now you start telling stories about what it used to be and how people used to do this and that. And so I was lucky, actually, when in the mid-90s, when I started here, guess who was my first department head the same semester he started with me at Illinois? That was David Daniel, actually.
Wow.
So I was lucky to have passed or gone through my assistant professor years under his mentorship and great advice. So that helped me, of course, I guess, come to a very good, at least tenured professor, associate professor promotion. But he also served as our dean back in those days. I learned a lot from him. And he also helped me to connect with the traditional geotechs, I would say. One thing that I like to tell you a story about David. He's a great guy. I know he even helped with his, later on position at the University of Texas, right, system. I know he was writing letters for me and all that for my promotion, professor promotion. But one thing that I learned from him is that when I talked to him and I realized that he didn't think pavement engineering was part of geotech, I was a little bit surprised, to be honest. And that's another thing that brought me to the field to realize that, I need to connect this disconnect between what pavement engineers do and geotechnical engineering needs to be as a background there for everybody, a good background, because you can't put layers on top of each other in the shallow pavement system without good geotech background, right? But I tell you, this cookbook, ASHTO Design, that everybody knows about that with pavement design, has really not done a good job for us, at least making things look too simple for building roads that survive a long time, which we want to do right now. Anyway, so I guess I've taken your question too long here to answer, a little bit going off tangent, but it's been a great experience and journey for 30 years here at UIUC.
We are all tangents on Director's Cut, so don't worry about that. That's how the magic of Director's Cut works. You end up talking about something completely different than you thought you were going to.
Yep.
We're going to get back into I always say the fun questions, but then I always say they're all fun questions. But I want to know about something that makes you emotional, Erol. And I'm going to ask what media makes you most emotional. And you can go with a song, a TV show, a movie, or anything really.
I'm a science fiction fan, so I really like, I guess, all the new upcoming science fiction movies. I have to watch them all. So, but when you also mention music, I need to tell you that I grew up watching Blues Brothers, and even those days that I wasn't here in the United States, I was like in love with the very first one and the Saturday Night Live shows, and those John Belushi's, and then I was, oh boy, I'd never realized I was going to end up in Illinois and near Chicago. So those two are my all-time favorites, really, the two Blues Brothers movies. And then I'm a Trekkie. I'm a Star Trek fan as well, and I end up watching every single episode of every series on Star Trek. But I also love, in general, all the other, I guess, science fiction movies, including Star Wars movies. My wife is more of a Star Wars fan. I'm a Trekkie guy. Anyway, those are the things that get me going usually when I have time to enjoy it.
And I will tell you, I embarrassingly, until I was about 25, was one of those people who would confuse Star Trek and Star Wars. And I would get a lot of angry stares from people over that because, how could you possibly do this? And now I kind of get it. At the time, I really did not. When you watched those Blues Brothers movies in particular, and now that you have been in Illinois all this time, was there anything when you moved to Illinois that you were disappointed to find was not 100% accurate in the movies? Or has it been pretty much the way you expected it to be?
Well, the cheeseburger place in Chicago, the famous, it's also part of the sketch they did for of course, the Saturday Night Live shows. I thought that place was going to be a little bigger and more, but anyway, it's a small joint. It's a burger joint. That's a little frustration, but other than that, no, I think I love everything. Yep.
And that is worth the trip. If anybody has not been to the Billy Goat when they're in Chicago, the skit that Erol mentioned, it was called the Olympia Cafe, I think, on Saturday Night Live.
Exactly. Yeah.
The real version is called the Billy Goat. There are a few locations. The original one is on Lower Michigan Avenue in downtown, and you got to go under the streets to get there, and but it is an experience. And if people have not been to the Billy Goat, they should. We had one in D.C. for a while, but it was kind of fancy, but it still did the job, but it closed. So, but we're going to put a link to that in the show notes so everybody can experience the Billy Goat. So the other question that we ask everybody when they come on Director's Cut is to tell their ASCE story. So Erol, how did you first get involved with ASCE and GI?
I started becoming an ASCE student member, I think, when I was at Georgia Tech, doing my master's, PhD work, master's and PhD. Master's was a bonus, actually. I got a second bonus on my way to PhD at Georgia Tech. But as part of the geotech group under Georgia Tech Geosystems Engineering, now they call it, but we had a really lively group that actually enjoyed doing things together, and as part of that we traveled. We had a trip all the way to Settlement 94 conference. I still remember vividly, actually. That was an amazing conference that took place, I think, in College Station in Texas. And that's when I got to meet a lot of the famous people that I used to read their papers. And that got me very much into all the ASCE and especially geotech involvement, right? But after I got my PhD in 95 and moved to Illinois, I was here as a postdoc first for about 8 months in 1996, exactly 30 years ago. And then I was lucky to be in the right place, right time with my senior faculty colleagues retiring. I got the position, teaching position in August of 96. And then, of course, I became a full member, associate member first, and then eventually full member with ASCE and got more involved. Interestingly, in the late 90s, when the institutes were established, right, with ASCE, I thought, as I was mentioning to you about my story with David Daniel, right, how I tried to find myself a home as what is my committee? What is my right professional society or professional committee to work under ASCE? I guess the payments committee was being established, and we owe a gratitude to Tom Papagiannakis for that. So that's when I said, oh, this is the right committee that I need to establish this connection, bringing geotech community and payment and transportation community together, which eventually turned out to be, I guess, my career-long work on establishing the transportation geotechnics field. Basically, which is what I'm proud of, actually, and still waving that flag. Yeah.
So this is where we always do a pitch to the viewers to get active in some way, and we would urge everybody to do the same thing that Erol did and find your home on one of our technical committees. We've got over 20 within GI, and then if you look at the other institutes, there are even more. So you might find one there too. But you can go to the Geo-Institute website, take a look at all the committees, reach out to the chairs, and they're always going to accept you. I always tell people there are two criteria to be part of a GI technical committee. One is you have to be interested in the topic, and two, you have to be a human being. And as long as you meet those two things, you're going to be able to join one of the technical committees. This question leads right into the next one. So you told your little ASCE and GI concise history there, Erol. Last year, even though it was only a few months ago, you became an ASCE distinguished member, which for everybody out there watching, there aren't a whole lot of these. You have to be nominated. There's a cap on how many distinguished members there can be every year. Basically, it means you're pretty cool and you're the cream of the crop, I guess, of the ASCE membership. You became a distinguished member at the ASCE convention in Seattle in October. Erol, what has been the coolest thing about being a distinguished member?
Thanks for bringing that up, Brad. This was one of the moments that I felt so much pride, and I was so honored. Especially, I had the chance to finally get to meet some of the other members getting inducted in that luncheon event that we attended, and then looking back at some of the names, my goodness, this is really the elite that out of I guess so many, something like 16,000 members maybe we have as ASCE members, and we're talking about 260 something of these distinguished members. That was the greatest memory and fondest memory for me, to be in that luncheon and get that recognition and getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, I call it, of distinguished members. I consider myself so lucky to be in that very distinguished group, because again, you never realize sometimes over the years what you do and what you contribute to the profession, how people feel about that. That was truly. With humility, that was like a great moment for me, that I accepted the honor. Yeah. Since then, I think that's the most amazing thing that people talk to me always, because people realize what this is. Even some of my high school friends, I was over the New Year's time, I was visiting Istanbul, and they were even following up with me on that, congratulating me. I was so shocked. So. Yeah, this is well known, I tell you, all over the world.
So I'll blow your mind a little more. So all time since 1852, there are well over 1 million members of ASCE since then. There's about 160,000 right now, but all time it's over
160,000. Excuse me, I forgot about
There
10.
are less than 1,600 distinguished members all time in the history of ASCE out of that. So
okay, I got my numbers totally wrong then.
it's
Thanks for correcting
pretty
me.
select, but it's pretty select company. To be part of that group. The pin that you get that has the little red stone in the middle, it's special, and we're so happy that you were able to be there in person to do it, and I'm glad I was able to be there when you received it. That was such a cool moment for me. And so for all of our viewers, you can nominate your colleagues for distinguished membership, and we'll put a link down in the show notes so that you can do that. And it really it's a big deal. And for Illinois, Tim Stark became a distinguished member in the class of 2024. Your class of 2025, that's amazing. 2 guys from the same department in back-to-back years. Says a lot about Illinois,
I have to mention one of my first, or maybe he was second or third, maybe second PhD, a good colleague, Halil Ceylan with Iowa State. He was the nominator for me. I greatly appreciate his help on that in nominating me. And considering that he's from the same time with me, actually from Illinois, just to bring him up. Yeah.
Fantastic. We've got 3 questions left. I counted wrong. And, for those who have been paying attention to the news, it's been really cold in the East and the South this winter, and the last few weeks especially. And during this, I realized something. I don't really change how many blankets I sleep under, whether it's like 90 degrees or 10 below outside, and I don't really understand why that is. Errol, how many blankets do you sleep under at night?
Well, believe it or not, we saw really minus temperatures in Fahrenheit. My wife still doesn't get that very well, and she only goes with Celsius. And I had to explain to her that's a minus 22 Celsius, which is like minus 5 or 6 degrees Fahrenheit. Anyway, but what we end up psychologically feeling is that, okay, we need to crank up the heat right in the house. and we do. And when we do that, of course, what happens is they usually second upstairs, the bedrooms, they get extremely hot. And sometimes I don't even need a blanket, but oh boy, I'm a side sleeper. I always have to put that blanket on and then completely cover myself. And but for that, I've been suffering, believe me. I especially the room getting too dry and the humidifier to turn on. And I had to do those things. I have been doing it. Yep. You
got to be prepared for that. I think what I've discovered is the only area where it really makes a difference for me is if I sit down to watch TV in the living room in the wintertime, I always put a blanket on when I'm sitting on the couch. In the summer, I don't ever do that. So I think that's my one behavior that changes with the blankets, depending
psychologically,
on...
I think the winter prepares you for that.
Well, and you want to be cozy. Like, it wouldn't make any sense to be watching a hockey game on your couch in shorts and a T-shirt with no blanket, right?
Right.
We like to end with big, broad questions here on Director's Cut, and we've got 2 for you, Errol. We start with this one. What time in your life have you felt most challenged?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. Just about a year ago, I lost my mom, and that happened to be on a New Year's Eve day. Well, it was New Year's Eve in 2024, and obviously these things you never expect. Although she was quite old and. Well, that was a tough moment for me. That was the worst, probably New Year's ever that I experienced. But the worst part was that I flew back to Istanbul on the 1st, on New Year's Day. And in 2024, TRB, which I had to be there, our Transportation Research Board meeting was an early event in the first week of the new month of January. And just about in 2 days, I had to come back. On the 3rd, I had to fly back, basically, to be to be going to TRB right on the Ford. That was probably the toughest day that I can remember in the most recent years. I mean, having lost my mom and at the same time having to go back and forth. But I'm glad I'd made the trip quickly, and my wife supported me by coming with me to TRB, to Washington, D.C. And she was there all the time, although she hated that conference from the point that I'm never free during the conference. But her being there was a great support for me. And again, I had to be there to support my research group and students, of course. I can never forget that tough moment, indeed. Yeah.
So when you have those challenging moments, are you the type of person that just takes on extra stuff and works harder through that, and that's one of your coping mechanisms, or do you do something else?
Well, very good question. Actually, interestingly, usually when you get yourself immersed into an event like a TRB, as you know, so many things going on, that in a way helped me than me sitting at home and not going to the conference. It sure helped me. I realized that after coming back from TRB that you need to keep your mind occupied, and I guess nothing really lessens the pain, but at the same time, there's you need to get your sanity sometimes in those tough times. Yeah, that helped me. Yeah.
Maybe like compartmentalizes things, and you've got this over here, and
absolutely, yeah.
So from that, we go to another big, broad, general question that's a little more fun. And this one, I haven't ever asked this one on the show either, or not directly the same way. Geotechnical engineering in general kind of gets a bad reputation as maybe not being the most exciting profession. Those within would argue. But I think there was a Reader's Digest survey that shows it as the most boring profession in America for a few years. Within that, you drill down farther and you've got pavement engineering. And some people say the same thing about pavement engineering. Again, pretty important work, but it gets a bad reputation as being boring. Erol, what do you tell people at social events or parties when they find out that you're a pavement engineer?
First thing I usually mention to everyone is that, hey, I did get a degree to become an engineer, a pavement engineer. It's not just everybody does this job. It's not the worst of engineering or anything. No, that's a joke. Well, I try to tell them I help build the roads better, and the way to do that is actually understanding your stones and rocks. Well, we call aggregates, but nobody knows what that means in the average guy on the street will not. So, okay, what are the rocks? Well, rocks are our national treasure, basically how you rebuild everything. My colleague from University of Georgia, Professor Limbing Wang, he has a very nice expression. He calls it stone skeleton infrastructure materials. Everything we build is based on stone, basically. I mean, even concrete or asphalt concrete, right? By volume, over 90% aggregates, everything, rocks. So I tell them I work on rocks, and I like sometimes working on rocks than doing some management job. Believe me, this is my research field and technical. There's a lot of science into it that sometimes they don't believe me, but yeah, indeed. I can be always a little more boring and start telling them, well, it takes about 38,000 tons of aggregate to build a mile of roads with 4-lane, highway like of a mile long stretch. And they say, okay, well, fine.
Do you ever get any unexpected questions though when you start telling? Because I would imagine there are people that you tell this thing to and immediately you can see their brain going, and then they ask a lot deeper questions that you'd expect? Or do you have times where people throw something at you that's just completely out there that you didn't expect to get at all?
Sometimes I get questions about how do we get those rocks? Where do people have no idea about quarries, stone quarries, mining, and some of those things, and then people sometimes don't pay attention. Things come and getting built, but they really start to think. They pay attention to what I'm saying, I guess, if they're in the right mood to do that. So.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, even if you only get to one person in the course of a night, that's one more person who can spread the word about the magic of geotechnical engineering or pavement engineering.
Definitely not
right?
the line to make friends with people in they can easily spot you as boring guy. Okay, walk away to the next person, right, at the party.
Well, Erol, you made it through all the questions. You made it through all the follow-up questions. You did a great job, and everybody got to see the block eye back there. Whew, we talked about a lot of stuff. This was pretty good for our viewers. If you liked what you saw, and I always say you're here at the end, so you probably did, again, click like, subscribe, and get notifications. And yes, we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Erol, thank you so much for doing this. I hope it was fun.
Well, it was great fun, Brad. I tell you, talking to you is so much easier than I thought. This would be a little bit challenging, but I'm much less nervous talking to you always. I appreciate
that's important. So now everybody else will see this and say, "Oh, Director's Cut's easy. I don't need to be scared about it." So again, for our viewers, we will see you back here same time, same day, same place with another brand new episode of Director's Cut.